Good morning, YouTube. This is HeKnowsHisSport, bringing you that heat and that fire. I'm going to talk about the Heat versus the Pacers. I'm also going to delve into the topic of the Spurs versus the Thunder. But right before I get into these two games, which were thrillers within themselves, I want to talk about something that's very important. This lends credibility back to HeKnowsHisSport. Previously, I made a video talking about Adam Silver, aka the poor man's David Stern, aka the rigging master. And hence I also talk expressly in the video about David Stern and how he's quote unquote burying the bodies that are the dirty secrets that are in the NBA. Here's more proof that lends credibility to your boy HeKnowsHisSport, and that also, allows the NBA conspiracy theorists like myself out there who understand that the NBA is a rigging machine and that it does not have a sanctioning body that governs it, and that it is a modern day legalized monopoly. They're going to be very happy and they're going to feel like their thirst has been quenched based on the information that I make readily available to them in this video. Also, you can find this information on BleacherReport.com. I'm shouting them out, not getting nothing for it, but hey, freely you receive, freely you should give. And also, if you go on Google, if you put in the names that I have, put out there, and some of the people that I will be talking about, regarding this important information that you need to know in this video prior to me talking about the playoffs, you could put their names in and it will pop up as well too, because I've tried it so many different ways and it comes up on Google. So don't take my word for it. I'm just a messenger. But at the end of the day, HeKnowsHisSport did tell you that the NBA is shady and that there's a whole bunch of dirty secrets going on. Now let's get into the information. You have the retired FBI agent. His name is Warren Flagg. This guy served a 20-year tenure with the FBI. He was hired by Mark Cuban after the 2006 NBA debacle. We all know who played in those finals. It was the Heat versus the Mavs. If you remember in the past video, I talked explicitly and expressly about how Tim Donaghy used that series as one of the springboards to pretty much put out there that the NBA was rigged, and how he talked about how Wade was getting preferential treatment. So let me explain what took place in this investigation. Mark Cuban, hired this guy to basically look deep into the officiating that was going on. Flagg, he says that Mark Cuban was even considering a lawsuit. Now, here's Flagg speaking. He says, Cuban asked me, what should he do? Then Flagg said, of the 2006 finals, I told him. Now listen to the key words here. These are powerful statements. Flagg said, I told him, sue and you will win your case. But he knew he would be killing the golden goose. Let me say that again, because I want this to marinate in your corpus callosum. I want this to marinate in your cerebellum. This man Flagg said that basically after his investigation, the determination he came up with, the outcome he came from, when he talked to Mark Cuban, he said, if you sue, you will win your case. But, he said, Mark Cuban knew that if he proceeded on going through with the lawsuit, he would be killing the golden goose. Remember, I used these terms before when I talked about the golden boys of the NBA with LeBron James, when I talked about the golden goose. I used these terms before, but golden goose in this reference, he's talking about the actual governing entity that runs the golden boys, like LeBron James. He's talking about the NBA. Now, what's ironic is, during the investigation, Flagg determined that Wade took 97 trips to the foul line in 6 games, including averaging 18.3 attempts over the final 4 games of the series. Isn't it ironic that the final 4 games was the 4 games straight that the Miami Heat won in the finals to make them go and win the series 4-2? Because if you remember, Dallas was up 2-0 in the series. And they had a pair of convincing wins in game 1 and game 2. It seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that the Mavs would cruise home. But the reality is this. But Wade's parade to the free throw line changed all of that. And you know who was the referee behind all of that? The main culprit, the main goon that the NBA brings in when they want to make sure that their rigging takes place to the highest level, it was Joey Crawford. Everyone knows that Joey Crawford is always in some form or some fashion in controversy. Everyone knows it. You know, I haven't met an NBA fan, even a casual NBA fan, that does not have issues with this guy. But he was the guy that was in the decided game 5, if you remember, that allowed Miami to go up 3-2. And then in game 6, we already know what happened. The Miami Heat won the series in 6. But what people don't realize is the reason why I brought up Joey Crawford is because in that game 5, when he officiated, Wade shot his highest number of foul shots. Wade took 25 foul shots. There's teams in basketball that don't even take 20 foul shots, let alone one man taking 25 foul shots. Come on now. If that's not rigging, I don't know what rigging is. I mean, come on, people. You just got to wake up and smell the coffee, you know. And it says here that in that same game, the reason why I brought that up is so that you can understand. The Mavs, as a collective team, shot the same amount of free throws as Wade took. Wade is one player, and he took more free throws than the average regular NBA team takes. He took 25 foul shots. The same amount that the Mavs collectively took as a team. They took 25 foul shots. So if we would have looked at all of the other fouls that the Miami Heat would have got, it could have been safe to assume that they would have at least taken 40 attempts. I don't know what the number was because I didn't see the full number of foul attempts they took as a team. But the reality is Wade by himself took 25 foul shots. If that's not damnable within itself, then I don't know what else is. The crazy part about it is when Flagg was talking about all of these things that took place with his investigation that was basically put into an abrupt halt because Mark Cuban didn't go through with the lawsuit. He was speaking to this gentleman named John Canzano. His last name is spelled Canzano, and he works with the Oregonian. Let me say that again. He works with the Oregonian, spelled Oregonian. The funny part about it is Flagg basically summarized that Cuban never followed through with the lawsuit. And the reason why Cuban never followed through with the lawsuit is because Flagg determined that Cuban was afraid of the consequences. The reality is Cuban is an NBA owner. If he comes out with damnable information against the Golden Goose, aka the NBA, then the same thing that you see that's going on with Donald Sterling, with them trying to terminate his ownership. Obviously, Donald Sterling's situation is a different matter that requires different circumstances. But the same fate would have ended up for Mark Cuban. As a matter of fact, Mark Cuban would have been terminated earlier, even though he legally owned his team. They would have made sure they would have found a vote. It wouldn't have taken them as long as it took Donald Sterling with this whole they're going to be voting in June 3rd nonsense. They should have been done this already. But if Mark Cuban would have came out with this damnable stuff against the NBA, do you understand that the NBA probably wouldn't even take a week to form 3/4 votes to go ahead and get this man removed from being an owner of the team? Mark Cuban understood the level. He understood the heights of the consequences. And because he understood that, he was too afraid to say anything. But the reality is, Flagg knew something. You know, for him to come out and say sue and you will win your case, I mean, those are powerful statements. For him to come out and say that Mark Cuban didn't go along with it, because if Mark Cuban would have continued on with the lawsuit, he would have been killing the Golden Goose. I mean, come on now. You guys can read this stuff for yourselves. Don't take my word for it. But the reality is this. If something like this is going on, if an FBI agent can come into the matter, and see, this is why I was saying that the NBA does need a sanctioning body. They need somebody to govern their affairs. Because this FBI agent was working independently. But because he was such a seasoned FBI agent and he knew his stuff, he knew how to bypass the nonsense. He knew how to bypass the foolery that the NBA tries to okie doke people on. And he was able to get some damnable information that could have been damnable against the NBA, that could have, pretty much murked the NBA's reputation. But we will never know what is the damnable information. But if you're an NBA conspiracy theorist like me, you can just pretty much, shuffle through what I said and see that it is what it is. I mean, it's just reaffirming or reconfirming the reality that the NBA is rigged. And this is what I've been trying to tell people from day one. Nobody wants to listen to this. But see, every time that I talk to you guys, every time that He Knows His Sport gives you information, it's always going to be something new that lends more credibility not only to He Knows His Sport and what he is saying, because he truly knows his sport, but the reality is it lends credibility to the fact that, me and the remnant of NBA conspiracy theorists out there who understand all the nuances that goes on with the rigging aspect of the NBA are not farces. We're not saying things that are heresy. On the contrary, we're telling the truth about the NBA, thereby exposing the mockery that the NBA is. Now, if Wade could get the favoritism that he got in 2006, needless to say, or need I say anymore, look at what's going on with, LeBron, aka La Overrated. I mean, just look at what's going on with him. And Wade was nowhere near as touted as he was. Wade didn't have no $90 million shoe contract, right before he even dribbled a basketball. But yet, if Wade could get the favoritism that he's got, I mean, you guys have seen it. I don't need to tell you. Because if I do this, I would have to start up a whole new video within itself to talk about, the mockery that is a LeBron James. But now I've given you the information. You go and research it yourself. And when you come back and you make your comments, you'll see that I'm not talking out of my butt. What I'm telling people is the truth. And therefore, I'm exposing the NBA for what they are. Because like I told everybody, the NBA is a rigging machine. And not only does this information lend credibility to He Knows His Sport, furthermore, it lends credibility to the person who I've been giving credit to, since day one, which is Tim Donaghy. It lends credibility to him because he's been considered a disgraced NBA referee amongst, his colleagues and the masses. But the reality is, this man has been exposing the NBA for what it is, and he's told the truth. As a matter of fact, he's even gotten into a fight with Joey Crawford, where Joey Crawford, stepped up to his face. Joey Crawford slapped him on the face, and then he hit Joey Crawford with a left hook. Don't take my word for it. That's why I said all this information is made available. If you read it through BleacherReport.com, or if you go and Google it online, you'll see it for yourself, and then you'll say, hey, He Knows His Sport wasn't just talking out of his head. This stuff is in black and white. Now let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Let's talk about the Miami Heat versus the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, in Game 1, the Indiana Pacers won 107-96. I'm not convinced that they will win the series just yet. Because like I said, the NBA is going to find somehow, some fashion to rig it for the Miami Heat. But in Game 1, Indiana was allowed to have a level playing field. They had 5 guys in double digits. Anytime Paul George scores 24 points, David West has 19 points, Roy Hibbert has 19 points, Lance Stevenson has 17 points, and George Hill has 15 points. Last time I checked, this is all the 5 starters of the Indiana Pacers. I haven't seen a game where the Indiana Pacers, as a starting 5 collectively, have had double-digit points in a very long time. But anytime you have, and I've said this before, 4 or more guys in double digits, you are 99.9% of the times guaranteed to win that game. There's no reason why you shouldn't win that game. Indiana played a good game. They had a good balance, and they started it the way that they should from the inside out. You know, they got their big guys involved early on. They got Roy Hibbert, his confidence up. I hope that they can continue to do those things. But like I said, I don't fully trust the Pacers to continue to give that consistency. But hey, if they can, and let's say they get game 2, we're talking about this is going to be a long series, and we're talking about the Pacers might even have a chance. But even if the Pacers win game 2, I'm still not sold. The only way that it can be sold for me that the Pacers can bypass the rigging that is the Miami Heat, who are the darlings of the NBA, and the golden boy, aka the puppet that is LeBron James, who the NBA is so infatuated with. The Pacers have to win 3 games, and they have to do it convincingly. Because see, in basketball, there's only one way to overcome the rigging aspect. You have to always, like I've said before, play tenacious. You have to play unrelentless basketball, and you have to play basketball at such a level where your sense of urgency is always activated. If you're not playing like that, and you're not playing with that constant hunger, that constant will, that constant rage to want to win, and then you're playing against a Miami Heat team who's going to see the free throw line 25 to 30 times collectively as a team, you're kidding yourself. And even in some games, they might even go to the free throw line 40 times. You're not going to win that series. So the reality is, can the Pacers keep up what they did in game 1? Yes, LeBron James and D Wade scored 25 and 27 points. Dwayne Wade being the leading scorer, and we don't know how long that's been. But the Pacers did a great job in neutralizing Chris Bosh. I've said this before. I've been on record that Chris Bosh is the most important player. And if Chris Bosh is not giving you anywhere near 18, 19, 20 points or anything near 8, 9, or 10 rebounds, he is not impacting the game the way that as the most important or X-factor player he is should. And the reality is, having 9 points, getting 2 rebounds and 4 assists is not going to get the job done. That is basically half of the contribution from a point standpoint. That is basically 25% of the contribution from a rebound standpoint. You're not going to get the job done putting up those type of productions. If they can do that and continue to neutralize Chris Bosh, because I think he had problems, guarding Roy Hibbert, which is the norm for him because we've seen this before last year where Roy Hibbert just basically takes him out of the game offensively because he has to exert so much defensive energy guarding Roy Hibbert. Then Indy has a really good chance to win this series. But the key is, can they keep up this intensity? And number 2, can they win game 2? Because if I was Indiana, game 2 is a must-win situation because you already know game 3 and game 4, you're not winning those games. They're going to make sure they rig it up so highly for the Miami Heat in game 3 and game 4 in Miami so that Miami can win those 2 games. So if Indiana could win the 2 games in Indiana, you're talking about a long series. That still does not guarantee them to win. In order for Indiana to win the series, they have to win 3 games. They have to be up on the Miami Heat by the end of game 5, 3-2. If they can do that, then let's say Miami gets game 6 in Miami, then game 7, if it's back on Indiana's home floor, even though I think the NBA is going to do all their powers to rig it against Miami, because Indiana is going to have all the confidence in the world from playing that series the way that they did and then having game 7 on their home floor. And if they can show a consistency of the way that they're playing, it doesn't matter how much the NBA rigs it for the Miami Heat, Indiana will get past that series. But see, it only has to be in those type of situations. So right now, I'm not impressed. It's 1-0. Basically, the series just started. All Indiana did was basically do what you're supposed to do in the playoffs. They won their first game on their home floor. Now, tonight, they're supposed to win game 2, which is supposed to be another game that they're supposed to win on their home floor and protect their home floor because they were the ones that ran their mouths and said, had this series would have had a 7 game on their home floor, they would have won. So you got what you wanted. Now it's time to deliver the goods. Now let's get to the San Antonio versus the Thunder. 3 things are evident in this series here. Serge Ibaka is not there. I mean, if Serge Ibaka was in the game, Tim Duncan would have been neutralized. But because Serge Ibaka wasn't there, Tim Duncan was able to go off for 27 points. That wouldn't have happened if Serge Ibaka was on the clock. This is what NBA fans need to understand. Serge Ibaka is that much of a potent defender. What people fail to realize is the last time that San Antonio played against the Spurs, the last time San Antonio played against the Thunder, the reality is the Thunder beat them. And you got to go back into the whole history of the series to understand all of the things that took place. Not only did Westbrook lash up Tony Parker, of course they had James Harden, but Serge Ibaka neutralized Tim Duncan. He shut Tim Duncan down. He was putting it to Tim Duncan and Kendrick Perkins. Kendrick Perkins can only do so much out there. I have all the faith and the confidence in the world because everyone knows OKC is my team. I believe that Steven Adams and I believe that Nick Collison can do what they can, but the reality is they are not Serge Ibaka. So I expect them to just continue to play the way that they're playing, but just give more effort. Because in the first game they could have done a little bit more in terms of trying to keep Duncan away from taking the easy shots that he liked, those easy little bank shots off of the backboard. You got to just make it a little hard for him. Make him pick up his dribble because he doesn't like picking up his dribble. He likes to take shots in his own little comfortable zone or comfortable spots and just make life hard for him, because Thiago Splitter is not really a guy who can create his own shot. He's one of those guys that basically, create points off of rebounds, and, he's one of those guys that get great positioning off of a rebound and then puts he puts the ball in the basket, but the reality is if you can do those things to Tim Duncan, a Steven Adams of the world, or if you can do those things, a Nick Collison of the world, you'll be able to neutralize him somewhat. Not to a full degree like Serge Ibaka can, but somewhat. I wasn't happy with the fact that, even though Durant and Westbrook had 28 and 25 respectively, that stat line still stays imminent in my head. Anytime Westbrook takes 20 or more shots, they lose. And then look at what happened. Westbrook took more shots than Durant. I told you I don't like that. As an OKC fan, you want Durant to be taking the most of the shots because Durant is the MVP right now. He is the guy that's going to become the golden boy of the NBA. He is the proverbial golden boy in line that the NBA is going to rig for next. So you want him to be taking most of the shots because he's going to get the respect that he deserves as an MVP. They're going to call the calls for him, especially with him winning MVP now. He just, jumped himself into a whole new level of stratosphere for the NBA to rig it for him. So that's why I don't want Westbrook taking the shots. I don't want Westbrook to be, taking more shots than him. Yes, I want Westbrook to be aggressive. I like all those things about Westbrook, about his erratic nature and all of that stuff. But as long as he can do it where his production always falls under Kevin Durant, then I have no problem with that. But when he does it and his production supersedes Kevin Durant, then it's an issue. I've seen him do it before, and I was kind of happy with the fact that he did it, in the Clippers series. Some of those games warranted for him to have to just basically take over because, for some reason Durant wasn't showing up, in some of those games, especially in the Memphis series. In some of those games, Durant wasn't showing up. So you could understand the justification of Westbrook doing what he was doing. But the reality is, Westbrook should only do those type of things only in those type of dire situations. But in 90% of the other situations that take place, which is usually the norm for OKC, Durant has to be the one taking the most shots. Durant has to be the best player on the team. Yes, he scored the most points, but I also want him taking the most shots because when he shoots the ball, he shoots it at 50% and higher. When Westbrook is shooting the ball, statistically, he shoots it 43%. A guy like that, that's a major difference. That's 7% differential. You do not want a guy who shoots 43% and take most of the shots on your team. That right there is a spell for detriment. But am I worried that, San Antonio's up 1-0? No, they did what they had to do. Just like I said in the first series, this series is far from over. Anyone who thinks that just doesn't know basketball. It's 1-0. All San Antonio did, they won their first game on the home floor. The second game, just like the second game versus the Indiana and Miami, I expect this second game between San Antonio and the Thunder, Wednesday night, to be very competitive. I expect the Thunder to come out blazing, and hopefully the Thunder can split the series. But even if they lose, you want the Thunder to lose in a fashion where it was a close game. That way they can hang their hats on that and say, hey, you know what? We gave all of our effort. Now we're taking the next 2 games back in OKC, and now we're in a must-win situation. But would they be in trouble if they go down 0-2? Yes, because I believe that in basketball, you can't go down 0-2 in a series. Is it over? No. But, you know, if you can split, which is always the goal for any road team that has the disadvantage of not having home court, now the home court becomes in your advantage because you're going to have the next 2 games on your home floor. So all in all, I expect OKC to split, you know, game 2. I wouldn't be surprised in the previous series with the Indiana and Miami if Miami splits it as well too. But in order for me to be convinced that Indiana wins, they're going to have to win game 2, and they're going to have to win a 3rd game. And they're going to have to win the 3rd game before Miami wins their 3rd game. If Indiana can pull that off, then there's a 75% chance that they can win the series. Now, in terms of, and the reason why I don't give it 100, because the rigging aspect of Miami is so high that you just got to see Indiana win the series just to believe it. So that's why I say 75 and not 100% chance, even though they go up 3-2, if that would be the case for Indiana. But OKC, this series smells to me like a series that can be 6 or 7 games as well. And I think OKC will get game 2. You know, I think they're going to make the series 1-1. You know, and I think by the time that, you know, Indy and Miami finish up, I have strong aspirations Miami is going to come out, you know, with a big punch. But I think Indy is going to take game 2. I don't know. I'm leaning towards that. Even though I don't trust them as a team, even though I know they have, you know, they're a dysfunctional group, and sometimes they could just make you want to, you know, scratch your head and wonder, you know, why are you doing these things? Why are you making these simple, retarded, you know, plays down the stretch, and why you're not, you know, applying simple basketball one-on-one strategies, you know, to the game, especially in pivotal situations like the NBA playoffs. I still think that they can pull off a game 2 win. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why I think that, but my prediction for game 2 is I got Indiana winning. They're going up 2-0 in this series, and I got OKC in game 2 tying up the series against San Antonio and making it 1-1. This is HeKnowsHisSport. Checking out.